Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. So it's the beginning of March, so I thought we'd do a little show around on the new beds that we produced, what we're intending to do for March, and the issues that have arisen so far. So we work hard in the winter months to create either new beds or new areas to grow. And one of the areas we've created is several different squash beds. Now this squash bed we've built about a month or so ago, I think it was now. We've used horse manure, which might bite us in the backside, but we've got horse manure down and a little bit of compost on the top. Now last year we grew in manure, horse manure as well, and we had fantastic squashes out of that. So at the moment we've had to put some chicken wire around the outside because the foxes were just, well, I have got a video on foxes at the moment, the issues that we've got. So we've used some old trampoline poles to create an arch to try and encourage the squashes to actually grow up and over. We did it last year and it was quite successful. So we've copied the design for this year as well. So that was number one of the squash beds that we created. Now obviously we've managed to add a lot of wood chip as well. So that's Mr. Fox damaging the roots of my tree. So I must remember to put a little bit of old chicken wire across the top of that as well. Now this is a bed for maybe this year, but it's going to be a no dig bed. So at the moment we've just covered the area with some old trampoline parts that we had left over just to keep the weeds down. In the bathtubs we are going to be growing carrots. Now we've got glass over these at the moment, but as you can see the amount of seeds that are growing inside, they are not carrots. This is just topsoil that we've taken from the actual allotment itself when we've moved things around. Topsoil and sand to make it a little bit more free draining. So this is going to have to be weeded before any carrots are sown. And that's our second one as well. Now this tree doesn't seem to get dug, which is a bit weird, but maybe I should cover it with chicken wire anyway. Now our fruit bushes are all starting to grow, which is good. I think most of these are black currants, but I think there's some red currants and some pink currants along here. And we have got some little daffodils coming through. This area is going to be a no dig bed. The potato area that my husband dug over, this will be ready for potatoes probably the end of March, April, Easter time. This bed I've got to do a little bit of work on. It's where the old compost bins were, so technically not a no dig bed, but that needs to be netted as well. And this is our second squash bed. Now this one's a little bit bigger than the other one, and we'll grow squashes along the side and mange 2 or beans along that side as well. We had such good success last year with squashes that we've actually still got squash left. They've stored really, really well, but I wanted different areas this year to grow squashes in because some of them did cross-pollinate, and whereas some of them were still edible, they really didn't store very well. So this year I wanted to try and give them a little bit more distance. There's still a risk of cross-pollination, but if you want to grow multiple different squashes, that's the risk that you're going to have to take. In these areas, whether I use the collars or not, I don't know, but I will be digging straight into the ground. As you can see, all the fine weeds have started to come up in this area. And this little square area here, once I move the plastic somewhere, will be for one set of corn. Now I'm going to grow 2 lots this year. I'm going to try and cram in as much as I can into this area. Corn stores incredibly well, so I want to grow the amaze that I grew last year. It was just so sweet, and I've got a couple of other varieties, but I haven't quite decided which ones to grow yet because there's still loads of time. The raspberry canes themselves are doing quite good as well. They're all in leaf or starting to leaf. I just wish I'd kept some of the labels on some of them so I knew what time of year they were fruiting. This area should produce quite a bit of fruit. Now, the raspberry canes in the pot were from the garden last year. These were suckers off my more established raspberry plant that gave me so much fruit. I just need to get them into the ground really and cut them back a little bit. With a lot of the fruit bushes and things, it might be a year or two before I get a half decent crop. But fingers crossed, I might be able to get some this year. This is the larger brassica cage, and we've covered it in plastic, and we will literally make holes into the plastic and grow directly into the ground below. It had a good mulch of manure underneath it. The problem is with brassicas, for us, we use a lot, and they do take up quite a bit of room. And the pests that like them, you've got a range from the slugs to the pigeons. So having them netted is a great way to protect them. This is our third squash bed. Now this is a squash bed we grew in last year. All the beds have been topped up with our own compost. And again, you can see this blue rope. Now this used to deter foxes from going in. I don't know why, it just did. But now we're finding that the foxes are actually biting through the rope and actually tearing it. As for squashes, I'm not 100% sure. I think it's going to be butternut squash and spaghetti squash at least. Spaghetti squash is absolutely fantastic and we actually love it. Brilliantly roasted in the oven, sliced in half with a little bit of thyme butter. Absolutely delicious. We still have our old compost bins, which we do have wood chip and leaf in the one, and that's sunk down quite a lot. So the smaller compost bins, they're for excess. So sometimes we get excess amount of delivery of green waste, sometimes far too much grass to put in one area. So most of the beds have still got their covers on. I don't see the point in taking the hessian off the top just yet. I'm not ready to plant. It's still too early for a majority of things. The only things I've planted is broad beans, because I know they'll cope in the ground with a bit of fleece cover, and some onion sets, which again, we've fleeced. But the rhubarb that I sowed last year is doing really quite well. All these were started from seed last year. And I think all in all, there is 10 plants. Now that's going to be a lot of rhubarb, but I use a lot of rhubarb. We make some fantastic barbecue sauces using rhubarb. Rhubarb's one of those things that's incredibly versatile, and whether it's sweet or savoury, it also freezes very well. The onion sets are all underneath the fleece, which is moved over in the wind. I need to pin that down a little bit better. Purple sprouting broccoli is doing okay. Really wish though that we could remember what variety it was. Now this is something I need to fix today, where the foxes tore through. And as you can see, they've done quite a bit of damage. So I think with that particular bed, for now, not because it needs extra protection, but I've got some plastic tunnel cloches. It may actually stop the foxes a little bit, fingers crossed. The elephant garlic is doing really well. Really thick stems. And there's other garlic, types of garlic along that side as well. Really hoping we're going to get a good crop out of the elephant garlic, because it is something I'd like to actually replant for next year, keeping a few bulbs to the side to replant. I've also noticed my little radish seeds are coming up as well. The garlic on the other bed is still doing well. No signs of yellowing. Now this was supermarket garlic. We thought we'd give it a go, see how it turns out. At the moment, it's looking okay. My strawberries are looking okay as well. I won't cover them with any fleece through the winter, but from the 10 plants we planted last year, we've got an awful lot of extra plants from that. The runners have sent out pretty much most of the bed, so I may have to move some of those around. We also have some herbs, some thyme and sage and rosemary as well, which I'm hoping the sage is going to grow back this year. It took a lot of frost damage this year. And the Jerusalem artichoke bed looks fine. It's my first time growing Jerusalem artichoke, so I'm really hoping for a half decent crop. And the one lonely purple sprouting broccoli that we just left in the ground, it's been battered and bruised by pigeons and pests, but it's still holding in, hoping that it will start sprouting soon. So that's pretty much where we're up to at the moment. As for the rest of March, we are going to start sowing again soon, just not yet. I'm holding back a couple of weeks. Everything that we can sow in March can be sown a bit later as well. So we've got the broad beans done, which I like to start early, and my early peas. That was the two main things I wanted to get started, and anything that would be absolutely fine in a polytunnel, such as the lettuces and the beets and things like that. I mean, no rush for anything else. Potatoes can wait a bit longer, and anything else along that lines can all wait a little bit longer. There's still plenty of time in the growing season, but it's cold. It's going to get extremely cold next week and probably the week after. So for the next 2 weeks, it will be just odd jobs around the plot or making some nice spaghetti squash soups. Our seedlings are doing all right. So we pricked out all our brassicas, the cabbages and things that we sowed in mid-Feb, and they're all happily growing in their little modules now. Now I have left some cabbages in the original tray, just in case anything doesn't make it, and then at least I've got some spares to put into modules. But so far, it's not looking too bad. But we do have a mouse problem here, mainly my own fault because I kept some heads of sunflowers in here to dry out before I harvested the seeds. The mouse found it, and they just love to sit there munching my seed. So have I decided on everything I'm going to do? No, not at all. There's a lot I want to sow, and I think literally by the end of March, April, that's when all the seedlings are pretty much going to be sown. But there's a lot of planning still to do, and I don't feel like in any rush to be able to do it. It's still quiet times down on the allotments, getting everything ready for the growing season ahead. So whereas this March walkthrough, there's plenty of change, there is still going to be plenty more to come.